Since starting this podcast, the number one question Ryan and I get asked is how and why we keep our nutrition so clean. It's January, the time of year when everybody's set their resolutions and are at the gym and working out, detoxing, trying to lose weight, and changing a lot of poor lifestyle habits. Instead of detoxing, we decided that we want to do our gut restoration program. But we thought we would share some of our personal history with nutrition, health, and why we chose this program, as well as why we choose to eat clean and healthy most of the time. And how, even when you think you are the healthiest, you may not be. It's really a podcast about listening to your body, about getting information, and then using that information to improve your quality of life. And if you listen to episode number 4 with Dr. Jillian Teta, it's from her book, Natural Solutions for Digestive Health. If you want to get this guide, you can. It's on our website at huntharvesthealth.com/gutrestoration2017. In this guide, you'll get step-by-step plans for how to do this gut restoration program on your own. Also, make sure to sign up on our Facebook page, as we will be giving 3 copies of Natural Solutions for Digestive Health away to Facebook likes. Thanks, and enjoy this podcast.
All right, folks, welcome to the Hunt Harvest Health podcast. This is episode 7. And today, what we thought we would talk about, we've been doing this podcast here for a couple weeks and started to get a lot of really, really good feedback from folks, and what people are interested in, and we're constantly getting messages about what people would like to hear, or this or that. So surprisingly, it's not a whole lot of hunting questions per se yet. I better do more of my part and make sure that we get more guys asking hunting questions, but. What we're getting asked a lot of is nutrition. We're getting folks ask about, plans and programs and, what could they do and this and that. So today I thought we'd just talk about our stories as far as what we're going to be doing here in the next month. We've got a little program that we're doing. It's kind of a gut restoration program that we've got different steps that we're going to take and different foods that we're going to be eliminating and taking in. And basically it's all going to be about our digestive health. So we're going to go over that today and kind of explain why we've come to the point that we have that we're going to be doing this program. All right. So Hill, how about you get started?
Sure. I think that people like the personal stories. We've gotten a lot of feedback on that.
Yeah, we're going to go over a little bit of our background in when we were healthy, when we're not feeling healthy, and kind of why we've taken the approach that we have as far as food intake, what kind of food, this and that. So that's kind of what this podcast
and why our lifestyle is the way it is. Why we've created the lifestyle that we're sharing with you on Hunt Harvest Health and StHealthy Hunter. Okay, my story is I was actually, as a young child, pretty fortunate, and sort of like Ryan, our parents were kind of the same. My parents ate fairly healthy when I was a kid, and we grew a garden. I remember always growing a garden in the summer. And my parents didn't eat, they didn't eat red meat back then. I remember no beef. My dad didn't hunt, so we didn't have hunting in our life back then. But we ate, I would say, pretty healthy up until the age of 12. And then my parents separated. And my mom was a single mom sort of, and worked a lot. And so she wasn't home cooking all the time, and things just changed in our life. And I noticed there's a lot more sugars in the diet. My lunches weren't as controlled, that kind of thing. And we also had a lot of stress. I would say that was probably the biggest factor when I was a teenager. So the other factor was that some of you may relate to this is I had chronic ear problems as a child. I had tubes in my ears, etc. And I probably took a lot of antibiotics as a child. Well, when I was a teenager, I got an infection and I had to take 2 rounds of pretty strong antibiotics. And after I did that, I think I was about 16, I just started having so many problems related to energy. I didn't relate, of course, this is an 80s. I'm dating myself here, but we didn't really relate it back then to, oh, you had taken these antibiotics and it wore your gut out. But I just started having a lot of fatigue. I was having digestive problems for sure. Seemed like everything I ate was giving me a reaction. Either I was having heart palpitations, I was having back pain, and I did suffer for a lot of my life with chronic headaches. And that's kind of another reason that I was always searching health-wise, and the profession that I do now helped with that. But so anyways, I was like 17 and I was pretty sick. I was not feeling very good. I was going to doctor after doctor, and they were literally just giving me more medications. So then I had somebody tell me, I grew up in Bozeman, Montana, and at that time we had like one naturopathic doctor, and literally her name was Willow, and her kids' names were like Rainbow and Star.
Go figure.
Yeah. So everyone was like, oh, you're going to go see her, you know. So I go there, and she did a test on me called live blood cell analysis. And I know that today because I'm a physician, so I know what she did. Back then, I didn't know what it was. It was like she took my blood, she stuck it on her slide and looked under a microscope, put it on the TV and showed it to me. And she said, oh, you see all these little things in your blood here? You don't want these. These are like a candida. That's what she told me. I was like, what? She said, this is why you're so sick. This is why you're so fatigued. This is why you're having all these pain and et cetera, et cetera. And you need to change your lifestyle. You need to stop eating basically everything good. You're going to live on vegetables and meat for months and months. You're going to take all these supplements and you're going to basically do it, or you're going to be sick for many, many years. At that point, I was desperate, and I did what she told me, and I actually got better. Within a couple weeks, I started feeling better. I started having less fatigue. So that was really where my interest in nutrition started. I followed that program on and off for a number of years. I'll say I did have a problem. I mean, I worked in college at like a sandwich shop and an ice cream shop, and ice cream was not on my diet. Brownies were not on my diet. Bread was not on my diet. Alcohol was not on my diet. So you can imagine me in college, I'm working at a sandwich ice cream shop, you know, and the ski hill. I worked at the ski hill at the bar. So it was kind of hard to avoid that. But I got better. I still continued to have headaches and stuff, but then I moved to Seattle and on and on and on. So my health was really challenged at a young age. And then kind of flash forward to mid-90s, I met Ryan in Alaska. And I would say at that point, I was kind of a food Nazi. Right
now, the food you were eating was not the food I was eating at that point. I was eating what I thought was healthy, but you were a few steps beyond what I was doing.
Well, I remember showing up to Alaska, and we basically had to eat what they prepared us. It was just standard American diet. It was pretty good. I mean, we had a good chef, and it was flavorful. There was a lot of garlic because there were so many mosquitoes. The cooks would put so much garlic in there that I remember like the first week, you could not stand the smell of people. And then after a while, you couldn't smell it because everybody was full of garlic. But I kind of remember thinking, oh, God, this isn't going to be good for me, you know, the diet situation. But I was much more diligent about my diet because I didn't feel good. And when I strayed, I knew it. When I took antibiotics, when I did anything off kilter like that, even small things like drinking alcohol, which, I mean, I worked in Pioneer Square of Seattle during the early 90s. So Nirvana, Pearl Jam, I worked in a restaurant where I worked in a bar down there. That was the place to be in the 90s, was Seattle. And so I won't say I didn't, abuse my body some, but I was always very aware of it. Ryan, when I met him, he was he was young, we were in our early 20s, but he was really healthy. He never complained of digestive issues to me. He always had abundant energy. He actually seemed like he could literally sleep 2 hours and wake up rested, and then he'd go work like a 16-hour day. Sleep was one of my big nemesis. If I didn't get sleep, things just did not work for me. And Ryan was unbelievable. Not only that, he could just work these crazy long hours, day after day, week after week. And he just seemed so even keel. So maybe that's where you should come in, babe, kind of talk about yourself.
Even keel. I'm still pretty even keel, but
he's even keel, but he was pretty healthy.
Yeah, I think growing up same way. I wasn't like a junk food addict and all that. I mean, I didn't eat great, but I didn't eat bad. And kind of my story, I guess, is I was, like I say, I didn't have any issues growing up. I didn't have to go to the doctors very often. But it seemed like back then when you did go to the doctors, if you weren't really aware of it, it was always just, a dose of antibiotics. So, I think that's pretty relatable to most folks. I think everybody in today's world has had their fair share of antibiotics run through their guts. So, I got into my 30s probably before I started feeling it. And, as a hunter, I've just figured that was the point where I was gonna start feeling these aches and pains from abusing my body. My dad, my uncle, they were always telling me, "Oh, wait till you're 30." And when we were younger, it was like, "Oh, wait till you're 30. You're not going to be hiking those hills like you are now." And we got to, we're 30 and we're still pretty much doing it. And then it switched to 40. It's like, "Oh, wait till you're 40." Well, I felt great, but I thought started to kind of come to a head in my 30s. Just figured out, shoot, I overdid it because hunting the backcountry and just hunting in general, it's super demanding. It's extremely demanding. It's a pretty rigorous physical activity if you do it right, I guess. Taxes the body in every way. Kind of how our hunts have always been since my teens. You're hiking into an area, putting a lot of miles on your legs, and usually, especially back then, we were overweighted with gear. Nowadays the gear is much better, but luckily we're older. But yeah, overweighted with gear. You hike in with this heavy loaded pack. It seemed like back then it was 50, 60 pounds, whereas now it's more like 40. And you're gaining elevation, you're starting out in elevation, all these things that can kind of take their toll on your body. But in my 20s and teens, I just thought I was invincible. Nothing was hurting me. Just didn't feel no pain. And then, I think over time, doing that so many years, it kind of, just figured it was catching up to me. Sleep deprivation is huge when you're hunting during hunting season. It's depending on the time of the year. You're always up an hour or two before light. If you're going to be hiking to a vantage and you're a few miles away, you got to get up pretty darn early. Get your coffee in you and your food and start hiking. And you're always basically, how we do it is we're hiking all day, hunting all day. We tend to get back in the dark on most nights, and you're just kind of scarfing down some food and then trying to catch some sleep. So sleep deprivation is huge because some nights, if we're moving camp, we're hiking, all night during the night and just getting to sleep when you can. I've always had a hard time like taking naps during the day, which I know I should, and some folks are able to do, but boy, it seems like I have a really hard time with that.
Well, Ryan too, it's not just hunting. Ryan has always been like, you're going to do it. You're going to do it all out. I mean, we learned skiing was like that. Here's this typical ski day with Ryan. You go up, you get on the lift. You do not go to the lodge till they're like closing. Hard skiing all day. Hiking. You go hiking. We take numerous backcountry hiking trips. I don't know how many miles a day. I have been known to beg him to stop walking. I cannot walk any further. I don't care where we stop. We have to stop. My legs can't go any further. So he was always pushing it. It's just his personality. He wanted to get, if he had a goal, he had to get there. If he was going to exercise, he was going to exercise as much as he could exercise. It was definitely in his DNA to be like that.
Yeah. And, for hunters out there, they understand what I'm talking about. Hunting's not easy. It's hard. If you do it right, you're one of those guys never gives up. You're just always pushing it. And you make it happen basically. You never stop or quit. And so you do that enough and it really starts just breaking you down. Physically, it breaks you down. Mentally, you try not to wear yourself out there. A week in the backcountry, it's just hard. So, you start counting up the trips over the years. Body's body's starting to feel the effects of all those trips and pack outs. You're taking heavy loads out of the hills after a long, hard week of hunting. So, basically, I guess what I'm getting at is hunting is extremely tough. So, I kind of started hitting a wall in my 30s, and I didn't know if it was age. I didn't know if it was just too many trips, too many, critters packed out or what. But, my body just started feeling fatigued, and I came off of a hunting season where I was well over 2 months, and my body hadn't recovered yet. Typically, a week or so back, and you're starting to feel good again. But this particular year, I was not recovering, and I just figured, holy smokes, I did it maybe a little bit too much, a little bit too hard this season. And so Hill and I went, I decided to do a blood test. Hill talked me into getting a blood test.
Not easily either. He was very stubborn about it, but he kept getting sick. We have kids, so we always just wrote it off.
Yeah, that was the other thing.
She's going to get sick, we're going to get sick. But Ryan would get sick, he'd get over it. And it was like every couple weeks he was getting something.
Yeah. So my body was just, it was feeling pretty shoddy. Yeah. So got the blood test and got those numbers back and kind of looked it over. And, Hill knows what those numbers mean. I had no idea.
Yeah, we did that GI function test too.
Yeah. So basically the two big things that jumped out of me at me was proteins. I was deficient. Omegas I was deficient, and I eat a
healthy omegas,
load of fish and a crud load of meat. So it didn't make a whole lot of sense that I was deficient in those two things. So basically, we kind of deducted that my gut was not working the way it should be. It wasn't digesting. I wasn't absorbing the things that I should be absorbing. So all the meat that I was taking in was basically going in, going out, and I wasn't getting it absorbed into my body.
And he in the GI function test is like probiotic, or with the beneficial bacteria, they were skewed. They were not right. Like he didn't have enough of the good ones, and that was overall causing a bunch of problems too. And when we order labs on a patient, they get sent to the lab, and the doctor at the lab goes over, and then sometimes we can consult with the doctor. And I remember the physician that he was seeing at the time, she consulted with the lab, and the guy was like, is this guy like starving himself? Because he had really low HDLs, like his cholesterols are really strange. And it just, like he said, it was not what we were expecting for how much actually he was eating and how healthy we thought we were eating.
I'm getting exercise, I'm eating right, the right stuff, all these things. I just thought I was healthy as an ox. But it didn't really show up until I started not recovering and just feeling like garbage and getting sick a lot. So,
yeah. We also did some genetic testing, which is too much to go into here, but he had a few genetic abnormalities that we worked on too, and that helped. But yeah, it was a big eye opener for him as to how he was pushing himself.
I was bummed out because all that meat I was eating, all
that elk. Ladies, when you tell your husband something and their eyes glaze over and they look at you like you don't know what you're talking about. I'd been telling him for years, you're going to wear your adrenals out. You're wearing your adrenals out, because not only was he taking these long, arduous trips, doing in the off season, doing long, arduous workouts and hikes and stuff. He had a job where, especially in the on season, like the spring and the summer, he's literally working some days 24 hours a day, maybe getting a couple hours of sleep.
A lot of days are like 19, 20 hours a day. So,
yeah. And he's doing that for weeks. And so and for years. So I told him, you're going to wear your adrenals out. And he just looked at me like, ugh. And when he finally got these tests done, he was like, okay, I get it. And from that, we had a pretty healthy diet, but here's the truth, right? You're eating a really healthy diet, but if your gut's not working right, it's basically no use to you because you have to be able to absorb that. People think that you may think you just eat food and it goes right into your blood and into your cells. Well, that's not really how it works.
It's not the case.
No,
Yeah.
there's lots of steps.
Figured that one out the hard way. So
yeah. So
basically we had to kind of, luckily I'm married to a doctor, so she could kind of go into what I need to do to make this right.
A blessing and a curse.
So I can get, yeah, no kidding. So I could get, all the nutrition out of what I was eating. You grow a garden, you eat wild game, you want to be getting the nutrients out of it, the benefits. Otherwise, I might as well just eat boxed food and junk processed food or fast food for that matter. I was getting about the same nutrition out of it. So it's kind of why we wanted to talk about this today. I think there's a lot of folks out there that might have similar type issues, and it just might not be something that they think of. They're fatigued, their adrenals are shot, maybe got a job that's, they're sleep deprived. A lot of people have that. Even just folks that have had issues and overloaded on antibiotics or gone through a couple of rounds of antibiotics, their gut's not, where it's supposed to be.
Well, what's a really common condition? Pain. And what do people take for pain? They're taking tons of Advil and aspirin and Aleve, and those are NSAIDs, and they cause gut damage. And insidiously over time, they start doing that, so even like, Dr. Jillian talked about acid blockers and stuff, a lot of medications that we're taking kind of frequently to cover up our problems that are also causing our gut, like the antibiotics, to hurt it. And I mean, we're all guilty of doing that. I just think that it's important to understand how that's actually affecting the way you're going to absorb your nutrients. So do you want to talk a little bit, I think, with us, with gardening, one of the reasons I think Ryan really got into gardening. We did garden before. We gardened, way before I went to med school. We had a garden and we started doing it. But when Ryan got really active into gardening, he started getting really conscious of growing his own food and built that greenhouse and all that he did. That was around the same time that he had all these problems come up. And you want to talk a little bit about why?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it had to do with that. I just wasn't feeling good. I ate clean, like I mentioned, but, I just figured, well, there's got to be some more things I can do. I know food is such a huge part. I had always kind of gone on, I'd heard at some point in my life, well, exercise is more important than food. So you're going to be healthier if you're super, if you're just amazing at getting your exercise. You exercise every day. You could eat like crud and exercise every day. You're still going to be pretty healthy. So I always kind of went off that and thought, well, shoot, I'm eating good, not eating the absolute best, but I exercise a lot. So I don't know. Once I started getting fatigued and just not recovering and just feeling like garbage, I decided to incorporate way more. I mean, much more in the way of healthy foods into my life. Was just, organic food, which was a big one. Back in the day, I thought organic was nonsense. It didn't really matter. You'll get an organic apple versus a regular apple. Who cares? But I did started noticing the taste was obviously better in the organic stuff. So I don't know, that kind of pushed me into just growing more of my own food. Obviously all the tomatoes and the peppers and the greens and every kind of green there is, and potatoes and squash, and there's so much. But that's kind of what I think. Or I was just getting smarter and not wanting to go to the grocery store and deal with that, so I could just grow it myself.
Well, you also kind of took your obsession with exercise and you put that into gardening because, Ryan doesn't do anything like lately. When he does it, he does it.
So obviously unprocessed food, I wanted to eliminate that, which we did.
Yeah.
Which it's kind of hard to do. There's so many things out there that are processed if you start paying attention, and, just not the greatest for you. But, basically kind of went to an organic diet, which was, the meat aspect of that was easy. The freezer is always full. But everything that went along with it, as far as greens and veggies and potatoes and sweet potatoes and fruits, a lot of that you can do yourself and add that in as well. So you're completely organic in a way.
Yeah, I think too, since we've had children, and we've looked at like what kids eat. It's crazy what kids eat. Kids crave carbs more just because I think their brains are growing so fast, they need that sugar. But our kids and eating so much garbage. Yeah, so much sugar, so many refined carbohydrates, so much bad dairy. And what was I listening to the other day? They were talking about children, and when they're born, when you're born, you have a very, like, what you will eat. It's a very small amount of what you will eat, but your taste, the way your taste develops is basically what you're fed. And the problem is we are feeding kids like their first food is like oatmeal mush and then like Cheerios and just all these really empty carbs. And it develops, it basically over time slowly decreases a lot of important like metabolic functions, including things like how you breathe. And it's really interesting. So I think when we had kids, it was also more, it's more important for us to have them be healthier. Because I do remember when I was a kid and my parents growing a garden, and just the enjoyment of being able to go out in the garden and pick like a real carrot out of the garden, and having access to that. I remember that as a kid. I think that was really important. And when I was a nutritionist before I was a doctor, I worked in Seattle in some inner city programs doing nutrition help for inner city kids and teaching their parents how to eat healthy food that was inexpensive. So like buying frozen vegetables because they have more nutrient quality, and how I basically would go to these after school programs and cook healthy food for these kids. And I'm not kidding. Some of these kids believed carrots came out of a grocery store. They didn't understand that these were plants that grew in the ground. And I think that growing up in Montana and just living in the wild open spaces and growing gardens and having exposure to that, I really realized how many people just don't understand that. And it starts with children. It starts with feeding children healthy, because we know when children are fed healthy, they tend to make better choices throughout their life. They feel better. So like me, I also had health problems and I was fed healthily. So it doesn't always mean you're going to be healthy forever and not have problems. But I think we got more into it because our children, we want our kids to eat healthy and be healthy.
Yeah, that's probably a big part of also why I really ramped up the nutrition part is, when Paley was born, our daughter, then you really start thinking about what the kids are eating. And you hear about recalls all the time. What I've noticed, I listen to the news a lot when I'm driving. Well, I listen to podcasts now, but I used to hear, it seemed like it was just getting more consistent recalls, like E. coli and all these crazy things with veggies or packaged foods or frozen vegetables or you name it. So, you tend to want to, once you have a kid, you figure, well, I want them to have the best. I want them to be healthy. I don't want there to be any kind of a threat of some E. coli bacteria that gets into them and have these massive problems. So, that was probably a good reason why I kind of went that way too, as both of us. But why don't we kind of go into, our program, what we're doing, what we're going to be doing for the next 28 days. We're going to...
Sure. We talked a little bit, it's, from Dr. Jillian's book, and I created a resource guide from the book that'll be on the website you can get. And it really just consists of 5 steps. This is, this time of year, we hear a lot about detoxes. So everybody's doing a detox or a cleanse, and we've done them. We've done so many. We've done all of them. We have a whole cabinet dedicated to supplements and detoxes and cleanses. And I mean, Ryan's been subjected to pretty much like everything under the sun, and then he finds something and goes back and forth. And there are.
I was not a fan of cleanses. I just thought it was, foo-foo, whatever. Back in the day when I first heard about them, who needs that, But then I started realizing now it does have a huge advantage.
Yeah. So this is not this is not like a cleanse per se. If you're doing a cleanse right now, great. Finish your cleanse and then do this. You know, you'll already be heads above everybody else in starting it, because this program is more about restoring gut health and getting your foundational systems for the rest of the year so that you can like give your gut a break and you can eventually digest and absorb better, right?
Yeah, I gave examples why, you know, I did this. I was feeling fatigued and just not feeling right and not recovering. But, you know, I think this could be applied to a lot of folks. Like I mentioned, antibiotic overuse or just adrenal, just not getting enough sleep. Your adrenals are shot, all these different things that affect your body. It really can't hurt you. It can only help you.
Yeah.
And me being the skeptic and as stubborn as I am, I finally caved and started doing them maybe like once a year, seems like. And so we've done a variety of them. This is going to be a little bit different than what we've done in the past. We just kind of tailor it to what we're doing.
Yeah. So the 5 steps are really simple and you're going to do them all at the same time. So it's 28 days long. It's a little longer than 28 days, but we'll kind of get into that. So for the first 28 days, you're going to do 5 things. You're going to eliminate a certain group of foods. We're not going to go into them here. You can probably guess what some of them are. The common allergenic foods. They're going to be in the guide, so you can check those out. And the second step is we're going to add a healthy, good probiotic at a high dose to your regimen every day. And that's important for feeding your microbiome, which is the fancy word right now, and helping your body to basically helping your immune system. Okay, so we're going to add a probiotic, step 2. Step 3 is we're going to boost your digestive ability. That's kind of a mouthful, but what that means is we're going to support digestion, which requires proper enzymatic function. So when you eat, you use hydrochloric acid in your stomach, which Dr. Jillian talked a ton of, which is a really common problem today. But having adequate stomach acid to break your proteins down and B12 absorption and all that. And then enzymes that are secreted by your pancreas that actually break those proteins, carbs, and fats down into amino acids, glucose, fatty acids, and those are what actually cross your abdominal lining. So if you don't know anything about biochemistry, just know this. When you eat like a piece of meat, you have protein in that meat. Once it hits your stomach, it has to be broken down by acid into tiny little pieces. And then when it gets into the small intestine, it has to be broken down into even smaller little pieces by pancreatic enzymes. And then you have amino acids. And those amino acids are what cross your abdominal lining. Big proteins crossing.
That's what I was not getting.
Right. So big proteins crossing your abdominal lining means you have big holes in your abdominal lining or leaky gut. It means you're absorbing large proteins. You should not be absorbing protein. You should be absorbing amino acids.
Do you think have leaky gut? I mean, is there any
here's the deal with leaky gut. I mean, Jillian has a big section in her book about it. You can go online and read about it. Some medical providers, conventional medical doctors, they just would totally poo-poo this. They say this doesn't even happen. This isn't even possible, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now with the whole functional medicine movement, we're seeing that all these things we've been saying for years, people are having these large proteins and large particles go into the bloodstream that's causing autoimmunity. We now know that people's digestive tracts are abused, trashed, allergies, and a lot of this is just from poor food quality, over medication, and increased stress.
But could you get leaky gut just from like one round of antibiotics? Is that what? Simple thing like that?
That's a good question. I'd have to look at the research on that. I would say that I think antibiotics can have their place. I've taken antibiotics before.
Well, they definitely have their place.
They do, but it's over abuse. And yes, I don't know if one round can do it, but we do know one round can mess up your flora.
But it's easy to kind of get that gut back right after you've taken a round of antibiotics.
Yeah, there's protocol that you would follow that most people don't because your doctor just gives you antibiotics and yeah. And
is it acidophilus is another one that you take? Or
acidophilus is one form of probiotic.
I thought like People would say to go eat yogurt after you've taken a round of antibiotics or something like that.
That's like acidophilus. But in the probiotic step, we're recommending a really broad base probiotic that has lots of different strains in it, because you have a lot of different strains, not just acidophilus. So it's important to get a broad strain probiotic. Leaky gut is, I think, a lot of symptoms people have, and not just like GI symptoms, brain fog, confusion. This is where the second brain comes in the gut and the whole enteric nervous system that Dr. Jillian talks about too. And we won't go into that, but that is all, can be affected by leaky gut. So we want to improve the body's ability to break all that stuff down into those little pieces that are going to get absorbed right. That's what step is that? 3. And then 4 is actually, we're going to repair the lining. So if you have leaky gut and you have these big holes and whatever, if you're taking the bad foods out, and you're healing the gut lining, that's going to help those tight junctions to come back together and things to work, so that when you do digest, your absorption is going to be less offensive. Let's put it that way. And you're also going to absorb things that you probably couldn't absorb before, and you needed certain nutrients, minerals, etc. And we do that with herbs and certain supplements called, like glutamine. Most people have heard of glutamine now. If they exercise or they take supplements for working out, glutamine's a big muscle food. It's also the number 1 food preferred by gut cells. It feeds them, so they like it. It helps heal those things. And then a bunch of different herbs. And those will be in the guide, but that's how you repair the lining. And then the 5th one is you improve your lifestyle factors. What that means is, obviously, you're improving your diet when you do this. You're taking out bad food. You're adding in good food. You're drinking a lot of water. You're staying hydrated. You're getting toxic things out of your environment. So what that may mean is, so ladies out there, men don't necessarily have this problem, because I don't see Ryan get up every day and lather himself in lotions and face creams and put his makeup on and put his lipstick on, spray his hair with hairspray, and then all day long keep applying his lipstick and he's not doing any of that. He's putting, probably the biggest thing for men is deodorants and heavy metals exposure. So men do it, and I know our population may not be a bunch of metrosexuals, so I could take that back. There's a lot of men out there doing a lot of self-care, but most of the time it's women. And women, from a young age, we are doing putting all these things on our body, and a lot of them are super toxic.
You girls are so unhealthy.
Well, it's true. We get exposed to so much through our skin. And women are you're just applying toxic chemicals to your skin all day long. And your skin is your biggest organ of absorption. So, when you take a shower, you actually absorb water when you take a shower. Yeah. So if you have a bunch of bad water, a bunch of chlorine and a bunch of heavy metals and all that, you're going to absorb those into your skin, just like makeup and stuff. So I always tell women, look at the self-care products that you're putting on yourself, men as well. That's a lifestyle thing that's we don't talk about it, but it's so common.
The only makeup I put on is face paint and archery season. That's about it.
And I have not examined the ingredients in that face paint. I probably don't want to know. But anyways, eliminating what you can. So I have a great story about when I worked in Montana. I've worked with some great people in Montana that work in farming communities, and they do work around chemicals, and chemicals are known to alter hormones. And I've done some work with people testing their blood, and, they're having certain symptoms, and, lo and behold, they're having exposures in their daily life. Now, here's the deal. A lot of those people cannot quit their job. They're not going to quit farming. They're not going to quit some of the exposures that they have, but you can minimize your exposure to those things. So I would say, when you get home from work and you've had a bunch of chemical exposures, you just take all your clothes off and you leave them at the door. You leave your boots outside. You wash your clothes. You take a shower. You try to decrease those things as much as possible. Maybe wearing a ventilator, maybe wearing gloves more, that kind of thing. So, and the other thing is, most of the population sits in traffic, and they're sitting, smoking a pack a day, sitting in traffic. Smoking a pack of cigarettes a day is like sitting in traffic. So, make sure your air filter in your car is changed out. And when you go to the Jiffy Lube and they look at you and go, you should replace this, and you don't want to pay for it, if it looks really gross, like replace it, because that's what you're breathing into your body when you're sitting in traffic all day. So these are exposures. That's one reason we grow garden. We get to control the vegetables and the food that we eat. Now, I can't have an avocado tree here, and I can't have a lemon tree or an olive tree or all these things I would love to have because I live in the Pacific Northwest, right? But I try as much as I can to buy those things that I can't grow organically. There's also foods that, I really don't need to buy organic avocados because they have a really thick skin on them. I'm not eating the skin of an avocado. So, there's also what is a dirty dozen. You can look up the dirty dozen, Google that. Those 12 foods you want to buy organic because you're eating the skin, your kids are eating the skins, and you're getting exposed to that. There's some things you don't need to always buy organic. Even though I really do love to support organic farmers. Ryan and I, we aren't farmers, quote unquote, but we basically are. We grow our own food. We believe in less toxic food. And so gardening is a great way to implement, even if it's just on your back porch, grow some vegetables. That right there is decreasing your toxic exposures.
The thing about it, when you grow it yourself, you control everything. You control the soil. You control every single aspect. You're not putting pesticides on, at least I don't.
That's down to the seed. You can control the seed. I
can completely understand why some folks do put a few things on there because, I've had some crops go, get taken over. But the longer I've done this, there's steps that you can take to prevent, a complete loss in your garden from little critters and whatnot. So I can control every single aspect of just the organic soil I'm adding. I got chickens, so I feed them a certain food, and they basically run roughshod over my garden all winter, and basically fertilize my garden for the springtime. So they've got complete control, and what they're putting out. I'm putting in healthy food into them, and they're putting out healthy fertilizer into my garden. So I can control all that, and I kind of know that there's not a bunch of toxins and junk in there. So,
what about exercise, honey? Because I think, like you said earlier, people are sometimes they're over exercising and they're not recovering, and that's increasing stress on your body. And I think that's a big, especially in this community, especially the backcountry community. Man, you guys beat yourselves up. It's crazy. So I think a lifestyle factor is finding a balance between pushing yourself and resting.
Yeah, that's kind of that fifth step, the lifestyle factor. Definitely recovery kind of goes along the lines of sleep as well. You gotta basically get your body back to where it should be. And after a hunting season, you might have gone 4, 5, 6 different trips, week-long trips, and by the end of it, you're just wiped out, and you're drained, you're skinny fat, you're lost all your muscle.
If you ever get a witness, if you ever got to, they're not doing it anymore, but you ever got to witness a meat pack at a train to hunt, boy, especially in July or August in Salt Lake, at how high up were we there?
I think we're 8,400 feet. Or
yeah, in the broiling heat, so hot that day. My kids were literally in the air-conditioned car running while we were running. Ryan's running these races, 100 pounds or 80 pounds on his back. These things are brutal. And if you're doing that on a hunt season, even if it's just one day, your recovery is you're just wrecking
the smart
yourself.
Person would recover from that. Give yourself a few days, and I'll let your body heal. Some of the best trainers and workout guys out there, they understand it. They know what it takes to get the most out of their body, and that's a lot of rest and recovery.
If you're biohacking, like a lot of these guys that we listen to, you just hook yourself up to all these different machines when you get home, which most people don't do. I mean, I think the truth of recovery is basics. Right.
Well, I think it's eating right. It's getting enough sleep. It's resting for a little bit before you go back into another workout.
Yeah. And one thing I too want to talk about in this, I put a little bit of it in the guide, is the whole thing with hormones. Because it's not a detox or a diet, this is not what this this gut restoration program is not a calorie restricted diet. Actually, we are asking, in it, it's like, can you eat at least 4 times a day? If you're a bigger guy, you may want to eat 5 or 6 times a day. It's not a calorie restricted diet, but what we find is when you just cut out all the crap, you start losing weight. And of course, with a moderate, with a good exercise program and sleep, you're going to recover. But the hormones is really interesting because guys tend to lose.
I know every time I do one of these, even if it's usually what we'll do is like a 2-week. This is kind of a longer version of what we typically do in a year. It's 28 days. So I don't know how much I'm going to lose during that time, but usually in 10 days to 2 weeks, I'll lose 10 plus pounds that I didn't know I had to lose. So it just jacks your metabolism up. Usually I'll start eating 6 meals a day versus 3 or 4, and my body just starts burning through stuff. And
what I like about it too is like my body type is I'm fairly skinny, but I can be skinny fat. So I burn through my lean muscle pretty quick. And a program like this it's a bit kind of like a bodybuilding program per se, where you're just eating more frequently, you're turning your metabolism on. It turns those hormones on that are supporting fat burning and muscle building if you're doing it right. And I actually will gain weight. So I will gain weight because I will gain lean muscle, which for me is super important, But the other thing is men they have testosterone. So women will go, oh my gosh, my husband lost 10 pounds and I lost 1 pound. Well, men have more testosterone. So if they're taking care of themselves, that testosterone is going to beef up their ability to lose more fat. So it's a faster process for men usually than it is for women. And I'm talking to all my age group of women, 40s and us young gals in our 40s and 50s and all that stuff. So this program isn't really meant to help you lose weight, but it can. And if you do it right, it can help you to build lean muscle too, because your gut's working better.
Yeah, I think once you start the process of eating more meals a day, eating cleaner, really paying attention to what you're eating, you're gonna lose weight if you have it to lose, no doubt about it.
And then after the 28 days and the 5 steps, there's actually a 6th step, but it's more about what you do after the 28 days. We will be taking a bunch of food out of your diet, right? And we're really doing that to see if any symptoms that you have are going to improve. So after the 28 days, if you are feeling much, much, much better, you probably want to quit the program and just kind of go back to eating, keeping your clean diet, but maybe you can introduce some of the foods you've had in the past. If you notice any symptoms, you might want to kind of figure that out and keep those foods out of your diet. If you have more serious symptoms or disorders, you may end up doing the program longer than 28 days. So the guide that we're going to give you is going to have more detail on that and how to do that after the first 5 steps in 28 days. And of course, Dr. Jillian's book is going to have very detailed information. And what's great about her book as well is she has an entire section that is totally dedicated to diagnosed disorders. So if you've been diagnosed with acid reflux, if you've been diagnosed with Crohn's disease or autoimmune disease, her book is going to be give you more specific direction for those conditions. That's the 5 steps plus what to do after. And I think we've kind of covered a lot with that.
So, all right, well, I think that was a pretty good kind of review of what we're going to be doing here in the next 28 days, I guess. We might go a little bit beyond that, but that kind of lays it out. And I think, Hill, you've got a guide on our website that can kind of lay out all the foods we're going to be eating, foods we're not going to be eating, kind of the entire process.
So we're giving it to you. We just want you to go sign up for it. So we're not just giving it to everybody if they don't want it. But it's at huntharvesthealth.com/gut-restoration-2017. If you go to that, there'll be all the information on there and you can download your copy of it. And if you want to do this, go ahead and do it. The other thing is this month, we're trying to build our social media a little bit. We've started a Facebook page at Hunt Harvest Health on Facebook. And if in the month of January, like our page, we're going to give away 3 of Dr. Jillian's books, The Natural Solutions for Digestive Health. So if that interests you, we're going to just randomly draw at the end of this month, and 3 people will get her books, which is a great resource guide. So the great thing about having the guide too is you can do this whenever you want. You know, we're going to start it here in the next couple weeks. Ryan's going to be traveling next week, so we may not get to it next week, but we're going to be starting this, and we just wanted to share it with our community because we think it is so important.
I guess with that, all right. Thanks, guys. Hey, folks. Thanks for listening to the Hunt Harvest Health podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. Any comments, ideas, suggestions, feel free to shoot us an email at lampers@StHealthyHunter.com. That's STH. Or go to our website at huntharvesthealth.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at StHealthyHunter or at Doc Hillary. Feel free to message me as well through Instagram, as I do really enjoy answering any questions related to gear, hunting, food, or you name it. Tag your photos as well if you'd like at Hunt Harvest Health or Get StHealthy, as we'd love to see what you guys are up to. Thanks. See you next time.